Eddie Van Halen strolled into a chill little guitar shop in Sherman Oaks, California, with his cap pulled low and shades on, moving like he didn't want a single head to turn. He just wanted to test out a fresh Stratocaster, nothing fancy, no spotlight, no entourage. Suddenly, a young salesman spotted this regular dude picking up a $3,000 Strat and, without missing a beat, said, "Sir, you're holding it wrong." He then added, "Maybe we should start you with something from our beginner section." It was the start of a legendary retail story that still gets whispered around music shops decades later. It was a warm Saturday in July 1991, and Eddie had a rare day off from tour rehearsals, the kind of breather where he could finally mess around with gear just for fun. He had been thinking about tweaking one of his guitars and wanted to feel how a stock Fender Strat stacked up against his custom-built beasts. No signature setup, no secret mods, just a real guitar anyone could grab off the wall. No fanfare, no cameras, just a musician looking to play. The spot was called Guitar Galaxy, a solid mid-sized shop in Sherman Oaks where weekend warriors and young dreamers came to chase their sound. It was not a fancy VIP showroom, no red carpets or closed-off rooms. Just buzzing amps, shiny racks, and a crew that spent their days showing beginners how to strum a G chord or explaining to gift shoppers why a Les Paul cost more than a Strat. Eddie rolled in wearing faded jeans, a worn black tee, a Dodgers cap pulled low, and dark sunglasses inside the store. With a bit of scruff on his chin and a relaxed walk, he looked like any other guy who played at a local bar on Friday nights. That was exactly the point. He wanted to blend in and be just another person looking for a good tone. The store was alive with sound. Teenagers were testing out slap bass lines in one corner, a middle-aged man was finger-picking folk tunes in another, and a couple of people were lost in the pedal section, twisting knobs like mad scientists. Nobody gave him a second glance, and Eddie could not have been happier about it. He went straight to the Strat wall and grabbed a sunburst that felt right. It had a solid body, a slick neck, and perfect balance, the kind of guitar that tells you it has a soul before you even plug it in. He lifted it down and walked toward a test amp, ready to let the thing sing. That was when he crossed paths with Bradley Morrison, the store's unofficial security guard for six-string instruments. Bradley was 23 years old, 8 months into his guitar sales career, and took his job very seriously. He stood tall, clipboard in hand, maintaining posture like he was guarding the Louvre. Bradley had 2 years of music school under his belt, could read sheet music like a pro, and knew all his modes, intervals, and chord theory by heart. In his mind, he was not just selling guitars, he was protecting them. When Bradley spotted the low-key guy lifting that shiny $3,000 American Standard Stratocaster, his danger radar went off like a fire alarm. This was top-shelf gear, not a demo axe for careless hands. He hustled over, trying to sound polite while keeping control of the moment. "Sir, can I help you with something?" he asked, keeping a tight, professional smile. Eddie looked up, calm as ever, flashing an easy grin. "Just wanted to try this one out." "Nice guitar," he said, casual and confident. Bradley's eyes locked onto Eddie's grip instantly, studying every finger like a detective reviewing security footage. What he saw made his inner music school instincts twitch. The left hand was not sitting on the neck properly, and the right hand angle completely broke the textbook rules he swore by. In his head, it screamed chaos, untrained movement waiting to wreck a masterpiece. "Sir," Bradley began carefully, lining up each word like he was teaching a masterclass, "you're holding the guitar incorrectly. Your left-hand position will make it hard to fret clean notes, and your right-hand technique is in standard form." He genuinely meant well, but he had no clue who he was lecturing. The next 60 seconds were about to rewrite shop history. Eddie looked down at his hands, then back up, calm, with a sly smirk creeping in. "This is how I've always held it." Bradley, still standing tall like a serious music coach, shot back confidently, "Well, that might be fine for casual playing, but that's not proper technique." He said it with total authority, as if quoting music theory fundamentals. Eddie nodded slowly, playing along. "I see. What would you recommend?" That was Bradley's cue. He stepped closer like a teacher about to enlighten a student, gently repositioning Eddie's hands. "Left hand should be like this, thumb behind the neck, not wrapped around. And the right hand, keep it perpendicular to the strings, not angled. These are fundamentals. Without them, you'll never play complex pieces properly. Complex pieces, Eddie repeated, one eyebrow raised, holding back laughter. Exactly, Bradley said with confidence. Then came the kicker. His voice softened, but the authority stayed thick in the air. Look, I don't mean to discourage you, but this is a professional-grade instrument. It's built for serious players. Maybe we should start you with something more appropriate for your skill level. We've got great beginner guitars in the $300 range, perfect for learning proper technique. Eddie paused, staring at him, deciding whether to laugh or play along. You think I need a beginner guitar? Bradley straightened up. I think everyone should start with the fundamentals. The guitar you're holding is what professionals use. Guys like Eddie Van Halen, for example. He'd use something like this, but he spent decades mastering proper technique. Eddie's grin widened. Eddie Van Halen has proper technique? Bradley hesitated, then nodded thoughtfully. Well, his technique is unorthodox, but he's earned the right to break the rules. You've got to learn the rules first before you can break them effectively. That's what they taught us in music school. Music school, huh? Eddie said, his voice smooth and teasing. So, you can play pretty well then? Bradley straightened his shoulders. I can read any piece of music you hand me. Classical training, full theory background. I know why every chord works the way it does. It's not about speed, it's about playing correctly. Eddie nodded, pretending to be impressed. That makes sense. Mind if I try this one anyway? Just want to feel what a professional guitar is like. Bradley hesitated, but rules were rules. Anyone could test a guitar if supervised. After a long breath, he gave a cautious nod. All right, but please be careful with it. Before Bradley could finish, Eddie was already plugging the Strat into a nearby amp. One twist of the volume knob, and the story erupted as Eddie ripped straight into the opening of Eruption. No warning, no warm-up, no tuning, just pure unleashed fire. The sound hit the room like thunder, and every conversation died mid-sentence. The teens in the corner froze mid-chord, the dad testing acoustics stopped strumming, and the cashier stood frozen with a half-printed receipt. Heads snapped toward Eddie as his fingers turned the fretboard into a blur of lightning-fast motion. He tapped, slid, bent, and shredded like a storm unleashed, every note slicing through the air with perfect clarity. This was the legendary two-handed tapping style he had invented back in the late 70s that flipped the whole guitar world upside down. The tone screamed, yet every sound was crystal sharp, precise, and alive with power. His right hand danced across the strings while his left tore through scales that broke every rule Bradley had preached minutes ago. It was not just playing, it was a masterclass in musical freedom. The entire store went dead still. You could have heard a guitar pick drop. Teenagers stood frozen with their instruments dangling, the middle-aged man lowered his acoustic guitar in disbelief, and employees stared speechless behind the counter. Eddie played for less than a minute, just the intro of Eruption, but it was enough to blow everyone's mind. When the last high note faded, a heavy silence fell over the shop. Bradley's face told the story without a word. Confusion turned to shock, and shock turned to sheer horror as he went ghost-white. His clipboard hand trembled as he stared at Eddie. Eddie calmly took off his sunglasses, revealing that familiar smirk that had filled stadiums for decades. Still think I need the beginner section, he asked, his voice low and playful. Bradley's mouth opened, but only a whisper escaped, "Oh my God. You're Eddie Van Halen." Eddie smiled softly, that calm rockstar charm blowing through the room. "And you're right about one thing," he said. "I do hold the guitar wrong, at least according to music school. But hey, it works for me." That single line broke the tension, and the whole shop erupted. People gasped, cheered, and clapped like they were in the front row of a concert. Teenagers surged forward asking for autographs, and employees whispered his name in awe. Eddie lifted a hand, his cool energy instantly calming the crowd. Despite being one of the greatest guitarists alive, his vibe was pure humility. He turned toward Bradley, who looked completely mortified, wishing he could disappear behind the amplifier wall. "Bradley," Eddie said, reading his name tag, "can we talk for a minute?" Bradley nodded, face red and speechless. Eddie guided him to a quiet corner away from the crowd. "Hey," Eddie started, his voice calm and real. "You weren't wrong about what you said. Technique is important. Classical form, theory, all of that matters. It gives you control and helps you express what you hear in your head. But here's the thing they don't always teach in school: there's no one correct way to play guitar. What counts is what sounds right." Bradley let out a shaky laugh. "I just told Eddie Van Halen he was holding the guitar wrong. I tried to send you to the beginner section. I'm so sorry." Eddie chuckled, shaking his head. "Don't be, man. You were just trying to help. You saw a guy who looked unsure, and you did your job. That's solid customer service. You didn't do anything wrong." Bradley rubbed his face. "I feel like such an idiot." Eddie's tone shifted, still kind, but grounded with authority. "You're not an idiot. You're trained, and that's a good thing. But technique should serve the music, not control it. If someone is making sounds that move people, even if it breaks every so-called rule, that's real music. Don't ever forget that." Just then, the store manager rushed over, face red and panicking. "Mr. Van Halen, I am so sorry for the inconvenience. This employee will be disciplined immediately. Please, take anything you want free of charge." Eddie raised a hand, stopping him firmly. "No discipline necessary," he said smoothly. "Bradley was just doing his job. He treated me like any other customer, and that's exactly how it should be. And I don't need any free guitars. I came here to buy this Strat if it's still for sale." The manager blinked, stunned, before exhaling in relief. "Of course it's for sale." Eddie turned back to Bradley with a genuine smile. "Actually, I'd like Bradley to ring me up. He started helping me, so he might as well finish the job." Bradley stood there speechless, holding the very guitar he had warned a living legend not to touch. Now he was selling it to him. With shaking hands, he led Eddie to the register to process the sale. As the receipt printed, Eddie offered one last piece of advice: keep studying theory and building that technique. It matters. But when you're helping someone, listen to how they play before you tell them they're wrong. Some of the greatest guitarists in history broke every rule ever written. That's why they made history, they never gave rules the final say. Eddie signed the slip, gave Bradley a friendly pat on the shoulder, and walked out with the sunburst Strat slung over his arm. Years later, Bradley shared the story during an interview, reflecting on the moment with laughter. "Eddie Van Halen taught me the biggest lesson I've ever learned about music. He showed me that rules are there to serve musicians, not control them. I spent 2 years in music school learning the right way to play, and Eddie spent 30 seconds showing me that right just means whatever sound you're chasing." When asked what became of the guitar Eddie bought, Bradley smiled. The shop kept the receipt framed on the wall for years. It read, "Eddie Van Halen's purchase, processed by the employee who told him he was holding the guitar wrong." A few months after the incident, Eddie stopped by the shop again, just as casual as before, and signed the frame. Right above the receipt in bold black ink, he wrote, "To Bradley, keep breaking the rules. Ev." When Eddie Van Halen passed away in 2020, the story resurfaced online alongside a photo of that signed receipt. Musicians from around the world shared it, paying tribute to a legend who chose to teach and inspire rather than humiliate someone. That encounter changed Bradley's entire perspective on music and life. He stopped chasing mechanical perfection and started chasing pure feeling. He began writing songs again, mixing classical structure with raw blues grit and wild tapping licks. Eventually, Bradley became a teacher himself. He hung that framed receipt in his studio, right above his desk where new students could see it every day. Whenever a student felt discouraged by technical mistakes, Bradley would point to Eddie's signature and remind them of the lesson he learned on that warm Saturday in July. Technique serves the music, not the other way around. Play what you feel, break the rules, and make the sound truly yours.